This is the recap of our End of Reconstruction lesson. Start off with terror in the South. The Ku Klux Klan forms in 1866. It is a secret society of white Southerners enraged by the loss of the Union and black freedom. In 1868, the KKK killed 300 in Arkansas. In Louisiana, it was 1,000. The KKK wants to terrorize black people and prevent them from voting. President Grant gets the Enforcement Act of 1870 passed, banning people from using any means to prevent minority voting. We'll talk about that, about voting and civil rights more in a minute. So Reconstruction ends. 4 reasons. Reconstruction came to symbolize corruption. Remember, Reconstruction was about as corrupt as anything else in American government at that time, and definitely less corrupt than the Democratic machine in New York. But it was tarred with that label as being corrupt, and Northerners did not like that. In 1873, there's an economic downturn. The Northern focus shifts from equality onto more, to economic matters. As the military leaves the South, whites use violence to suppress the vote and take back state governments, and Democrats come to power in the South. It becomes the solid South in that it always votes Democratic in presidential elections, local elections, congressional elections. It votes for the South. Those Democrats, for the Democratic Party, those Democrats reverse Reconstruction legislature policies. Supreme Court limits the amendments. They take very narrow interpretations of the 14th and 15th Amendments. The 14th Amendment applies the Bill of Rights protections to all people when it comes to state and local governments. The 15th Amendment outlawing discrimination by race in voting. These are minimally interpreted. So things like poll taxes and intelligence tests, which are designed to prevent African Americans from voting, are allowed because they're not explicitly saying, hey, you can't vote because you're black. Okay, civil rights is put in the state's hands. The federal government very limited in its ability to protect civil rights and voting rights for African Americans. So Reconstruction ends. What does it mean for African Americans? It means a lot of things. Most importantly, sharecropping. It means segregation, and it means a lack of an ability to vote because they are intimidated and prevented through other ways such as poll taxes, literacy tests, to prevent it from voting in those ways. We get the election of 1876, and this is the real final end. There is some dispute about, was it already over? But okay. 3 states have conflicting totals. There is a big controversy over who's going to win, the Republican or the Democrat. There is a conference, and the conference awards the election to the Republican. Not on paper, but it is said behind the scenes that the Democrats agreed to this result as long as the last federal troops would be withdrawn from the South. The Democrats were said to make a promise to respect African American rights. That promise was most certainly not kept. 1876 was different from previous presidential elections, as we watched in the video clip, because it was the first time the Electoral College vote was close. Now, very technically, of course, it was tied in 1800 with Jefferson and Burr, but they were running on the same ticket. They were president and vice president, and it was a flaw in the system that didn't see the rise of political parties that caused that problem. This was the first time that the 2 different parties came very close in the Electoral College. It was actually 185 to 184, the final total. Republican Rutherford B. Hayes over Democrat Samuel Tilden. The states that were in dispute, the video we watched said 2, it was actually 3, but the big 2 were Florida and Louisiana. And things get much worse for African Americans after the compromise. You get segregation, you get Jim Crow, you get violence, you get lack of federal government protection. So that is a recap of our lesson on the end of Reconstruction.